Hey, welcome to 49cc Scoot. My name's Brent. Last time around, I started working on the Stage6 RT FL100 on RC1 cases by cutting the engine cases to fit the Stage6 crankshaft. This time around, I'll be port matching, because clearly, this isn't going to work the way it is. What you're looking at here is the Stage6 RT FL100 base gasket on a set of RC1 cases that has not been port matched to even the 94cc yet. These are right out of the box, aside from the case cutting that I did for the crank clearance. I'm just going to do a real quick markup here to give you an idea of exactly what kind of material removal we're looking at. That is a whole lot of material that I'm going to have to remove to get these transfers to match up. Just for a better idea, that is about 4.8 millimeters, 189 thousandths of an inch. Over here in some of the worst parts, about 7 millimeters of material to be removed, which is over 1/4 of an inch, 0.275. On the boost port, it's a little bit different scenario. The boost port goes up higher than the RC1's boost port, but it's not as wide. So if I wanted that to match, I would actually have to fill inside of here, and I'm not sure if I'm going to do that yet. But what really bothers me is these holes here that I'm not supposed to have. These are generally for a C1, but I got them in these alleged new design RC1 cases, and they're right on the edge of the ports here for the Stage6. Looking at them right now, it looks like there's a chance I would have something left over here. I think it's going to cut into them. But I would prefer not to leave that to chance, because it's going to be a whole lot easier to fill these now than it would be if I cut through them and then have to fill them after they've already been cut through. It doesn't look like it's going to get into these holes on the bottom, but it looks like it's going to be very close, so I'll fill those as well. My first thought for dealing with these was to make up some aluminum studs to go in each hole and cut them just a little bit shy of coming up to the actual base surface. And when I installed the studs, I would put JB Weld in there and make sure I filled above it. I got thinking about that, and should anything come loose, I would prefer that just JB Weld comes out, because JB Weld probably isn't going to do a lot of damage to anything inside of the cases, where if an aluminum stud were to fall out and then start banging around in there, it could cause me serious problems. So I'm just going to try to fill with JB Weld. Filling these with JB Weld sounds simple enough, but there is a little bit more to think about. So if I were to fill these holes and overfill them a little bit, then whatever is running over, sitting above this surface, would be a problem for base gasket sealing. I'd have to sand it down. But you don't just want to sand on a base surface like this if you can avoid it, because you want that to remain totally flat and true. If I don't fill it all the way up to the top, if I cut in, say to here, then I'll have a smooth port all the way up until it runs into that part that I didn't fill, and then I've got a gap there again, which is what I'm trying to avoid. I want nice, smooth, clean port edges. Will it make a huge difference in horsepower? Probably not, but I would feel better doing it that way. What I'm hoping to do is use a piece of glass to create a nice, flat, true surface there, right at the top of each one of those stud holes when I fill them with JB Weld. And this is something that I saw John post 190 Mech on the 49cc Scoot forums. He says to grease the glass, and then you can put that right up against there with a weight, and it should be able to be removed once it's cured, and you'll be left with a nice flat surface. Will it work out for me? We're going to find out. Step one for me is going to be making sure all of this area is very clean, inside of the stud holes as well as the base area. Now I'm kind of second guessing myself, because my initial thought, and what I think I'm still thinking, is I'd be better off if I could get this to face straight up and pour the JB Weld down in there and then put a piece of glass on top of that, and that way I would be sure that it's actually filling the holes all the way down. But then I'm thinking, if I want to be certain that it fills all the way to the top, you'd actually be better off if you flipped it so that the holes were facing down, though I'm not exactly sure how you fill that. So this may go wrong, I hope not, but I think I'm going to try and just get this flat and level, and then I'll see if I can find some glass to fit on top of here. I've got a piece of plate glass large enough to cover the entire area there. So I guess I'm just going to go ahead and grease everything, then I'll do the JB weld, and then put it all together. I think I was delusional thinking I wouldn't get this all over the place, because it's kind of tough to fill these little holes without getting anything all over it. Trying to work it down in there a little bit, make sure it actually gets all the way down in the bottom of the hole. I think I'm going to wind up with this all over the place, but maybe the thing that will save me from past experience putting JB weld in cases is that the JB weld will usually sand away a lot easier than the aluminum. I think the only way I'm ever going to have a flat surface is to actually have some spillover, because when I try to flatten it out with a spatula, I think I'm taking so much away that it actually does dip down a little bit in there. It's not nearly as critical as I'm probably making it, but you know, trying to figure out the process. I've got the glass greased a lot heavier than I greased the top of that. Yeah, that's pushing it out all over the place. We'll see what it looks like tomorrow, because I'm going to give this roughly 24 hours to cure. Are you ready to build your own RC1? Or maybe a Polini PRE, or a Too Fast Passion, maybe a Minarelli based, a Piaggio, a GY6, a Grom, a Ruckus? Whatever it is, check out scootertuning.ca, because they've got parts for you. They've also got fast, affordable, or even free shipping, and excellent customer service. And they support this channel by giving me a discount on parts, which helps me to buy more parts and build more projects, and the more I do, the more I can share with you. So please support people that support the scooter community, and check out scootertuning.ca. It's been just shy of 24 hours now, so I want to see how this thing turned out. There's a good look at how much it spread the JB weld out across there. First observation really though is that this didn't just want to pop off. It's sort of glued on there. There it goes. Okay. Now I'm going to wipe this down with a little bit of solvent and try to get the grease off. That went way, way better than expected. I'm using this multi-purpose shop solvent. One of my friends gave it to me to try it out, and the stuff actually is really good. It says it's made by Magnum 2000. Wiping that over it took the grease as well as the residue that I thought was the JB weld that wasn't going to come off without sanding off, and has left these, they're not flush, they're actually a little bit below each surface, but they're very, very close to flush. Now I've just got some little chunks here, and I think I'll be able to just chip those off. Yeah. So I am quite happy with that. I didn't expect this to be nearly that easy. I really thought I would be sanding and struggling to get this flat without ruining this surface. Now that that's done, it's about time to start gasket matching. But before I try to match the case to the gasket, I like to make sure that the cylinder has any work that I want done to it finished, and that the base gasket matches the cylinder. This is the Malossi MHR 94cc, and this is the Stage6 RT FL100. I would have thought if you looked at two supposed to be high-end racing kits side by side that are very close in displacement, you wouldn't really see a whole lot of difference. But that absolutely is not the case. It's pretty wild. Look at the difference in the transfer area here compared to the Malossi. These things are huge. I mean, they are cavernous compared to what the Malossi has in the 94cc. The Malossi, you can see a curvature around there. They call this usually teacup transfers because a teacup handle kind of curves around. You can see it there, but in the Stage6 it's very obvious. It really comes out and swoops back in there. Malossi seems to like a really wide boost port. Stage 6 doesn't give so much area here to the boost port. And remember, these are the same bore size. They're both a 52mm bore. As far as the cylinder goes, I'm no professional porter, so I don't want to mess with this a whole lot because it looks pretty decent. But one thing I like to check is just make sure I don't have any rough edges like a lip here on any of these spots where it meets up at the base, which I don't. Generally, the ports look really good. I would say they look better than the Malossi ports, but there are these sections, like right here, for example. You can see a bunch of casting flaw. Got some going down there. Nothing awful, but there's a little bit of stuff that I'm hoping maybe I can clean up. And while I'm at it, there's this little sort of pebble here, this little piece of slag or whatever stuck on the side. I would like to get rid of that because it's really a kind of sharp piece and has no purpose there. I'm also not a huge fan of these really sharp edges here. They're right next to the transfer and they just make a sharp edge with edges sticking out. Now I don't think I'm going to mess with the inside one. Again, that is the Nicosil plating. I really just don't want to mess with that any more than I have to, but I may try to smooth the outside edges down a little bit. And there's some more roughness in the exhaust port area that I think I can get to. Looking into the transfer windows, there is some roughness around that area, but I don't have a 90-degree tool, so I don't really think I would be successful at getting in there. So that stuff's probably going to be left alone. I didn't do anything great, but at least I got the worst of the casting flaws out of those corners especially, and some of these dividers in the transfers. Also, on each one of these edges here, about 1/4 of an inch down, I could feel a ridge. So I went ahead and took that out on both sides. Hopefully I don't later find out that's a very important part of why the Stage 6 makes horsepower. I don't think I will. I got the flaws out of the exhaust port as well. That looks bad, but you can't feel it at all. So this is ready for me to make sure that the gasket matches it. One thing that I do really like about the Stage 6 gasket is that these studs are a snug fit through the holes here, where with Malossi, they give you these very large holes, and when you put it on there, the gasket can wiggle all around. The gasket's a pretty good match with the cylinder. There's a little bit of an overhang on each one of the edges here and here, except for the corner there and the corner there, where it looks like the cylinder is not as big as the gasket, and boost port's the same, just a little tiny bit of overhang. So I'll just get rid of that stuff. Now the fun job of removing all of this material while trying to keep a nice sort of ramp shape or profile from the crank area all the way up to the base area. I started trying candle wax as a lubricant for the carbide burrs to try and keep them from clogging. So I just dip the burr down into the melted wax, and then it dries and leaves a nice coating on there. Here's where I'm at after quite a while removing material. So I've got it port matched, and I've also really tried to make a nice smooth transition from the reed area all the way up to the edge of the port. And when I'm doing this, I use my finger a lot, and I really try to feel around if I feel any ridges, high spots, low spots, bumps, whatever, and get those out. In my opinion, tool shape is a lot about personal preference and what works for you, what you're comfortable with. But let me just show you what I've been working with in case it's helpful. So the number one thing for me is I think about the shape of what I'm doing, or the contour. So if I want something very straight, then I'm going to use something like this that's very straight. If I want to create a taper, then I'm usually going to use this triangular, like cone-shaped, or this flame kind of bit. The cone type here, especially if you get the really pointy ones, can be kind of tough. If you're trying to go around corners, it might dig in a little bit more than you want. That's where the flame shape, in my opinion, is a better choice. So think about that, and then when I'm really trying to smooth things out over a large area, then I like to go to something larger, like this drum sander type. There's the gasket in place, so you can see that everything is matched up nicely. If you watched my video complaining about how I got essentially C1 cases, so they have these extra holes that I had to fill, now you can see why I was upset about it and I don't like them. So I just barely got into it right here, but then on the flip side, when I was trying to create a transition through there, I opened that hole up quite a bit. Unfortunately, you can see that I didn't get a great fill in there with the JB Weld. I filled maybe the top third of that and not all this. So I'm going to have to put JB Weld in there again at some point and then smooth this out. Of course, you do have to port this just to match it up with the MHR94, but it's not a lot of porting. But when you look at an unfinished case versus the finished ported case, it is a massive, massive difference. Now I've done the other side, just got everything bolted up so I can see that I got a good match all around every port. Some of these spots it looks like it's not matching, you're seeing black, but that's from me using marker. Everything right now looks good there. So I'll take the gasket off and then I'll just go around the areas right here on the seams and make sure that all this stuff matches up well to each other. The last part of this process should be filling these bolt holes where I cut through, and I did it on both cases. So what I'm going to do is set the case's base surface down, that way the JB Weld will run down in there, and I'll probably use a little bit of heat, again in hope of getting the JB Weld to run down in there better. I got the JB Weld ground down on both cases. Seems to be pretty solid. I can at least push on them, tap on them, whatever. Nothing's breaking away, so hopefully those will be good. I did put the cylinder on here on both cases and the piston in at roughly bottom dead center and just look it over to make sure it looked mostly all right. Looks fine. So for me, I'm done with the cases essentially at this point as far as any modifications and grinding. Next step, we'll be working toward getting some bearings and the crank in there. But before I do that, I'm going to set the crank up and just make sure it's true. Next up is gearbox stuff. This is all pretty standard for the RC1, primary gears, secondary gears, and Malossi gearbox cover with bearings installed. But what I did want to mention here is that I changed up the primary ratio compared to my other RC1. So there are two different primary sets that Malossi sells. One is a 1439 and the other is a 1538. These are the 1538 gears. On the other one, my first RC1 with the Malossi MHR94 setup, I used the deeper gears, the 1439s, and that gave a 10.286 to 1 final drive ratio. This time, these will give me a 9.352 to 1 final drive ratio. Seem to have a rough spot, like just one area right here, and I hit this and I can't turn it easily, and I have to put some force on it and then it'll turn. If I turn it back the other way, same thing, it hits right in this one spot. And other than that, it turns fine. If I'm turning it quickly, I can go basically right past it most of the time, but if I go slow, right there, it's like it hits a wall. I wonder if there's an imperfection with something or what's going on. Initially, I thought it was too tight. I took one of the shims out. Now I'm not sure if it's not just hitting that one spot. I felt a little roughness in the bearing on this earlier, so I'm going to mark the shaft and the seal up here. That way I know that's right where it happens. So if I pull that off, and the two marks on here still align, then it's got to be something to do with that bearing. It's not that, because I don't really feel it here now. Just making sure these move freely, nothing weird in there. This bearing right here is a cup bearing. Instead of being open on both ends, it actually has an end cap on there. So I don't think it's hitting this nub, but should be easy enough to tell if I bolt this on. This feels totally fine. So it's somewhere else. The primary drive shaft should be okay on its own. So let me try to add one gear. And now it's rough. Aligns right there where it stops now. So it's something between those two gears while installed. What I found is right here on this edge of that one tooth, there is a little bit of a bump. I hope you can see that in there. And with a sharp edge, sometimes I can feel it as I run across there. So that just happens to be on one of the two teeth that I had marked before that I suspected would be where the trouble is. So I'm going to guess that's it. I guess I'll try to run a file across it and see if I can just knock off that sharp edge. And if I do that, we'll see if it stops hanging up. I think I wasted roughly 4 hours going over this primary drive shaft trying to figure out two different spots on here that would hang up. I literally looked it over with a magnifying glass. I tried to feel across the surfaces with a tool to see if anything would hang up. I couldn't get anywhere. I couldn't see anything on the last spot. Eventually, I just took a small piece of sandpaper and went over both of the teeth on the gear where it was having a problem. Cleaned it all up as thoroughly as I can, put it back together, and finally it works. And I can't see any difference in those teeth, aside from maybe a little difference in the finish just from the sandpaper, but it works. So finally I can move on, get this thing back apart, and then put it together for real with some sealant. At this point, it's port matched, the bottom end is together, and the entire gearbox is done. So I'm going to wrap this one up here. If you've enjoyed this video or found it helpful, please give it a like, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any more of this project or anything else that I've got going on. As always, thank you for watching.